40. Black icons who quietly ran 2025 and changed everything. 2025 didn't belong to the loudest voices. It belonged to the quietest power players. While the world chased headlines, a group of black icons moved in silence, reshaping culture, money, leadership, and influence from the inside out. No scandals, no viral chaos, just real control. This isn't a list built on hype, it's built on impact, from music and sports to business, politics, and community. These figures didn't just survive 2025, they ran it. Welcome to Legends of Black Excellence. Watch closely and ask yourself, who really holds power when the noise fades? Beyoncé. Beyoncé did not dominate 2025 by chasing headlines, she controlled it by setting standards. As a global singer, producer, and cultural architect, Beyoncé's influence this year was measured less by noise and more by reach. Her creative decisions continued to redefine ownership, artistic independence, and long-term relevance. Rather than oversaturating the market, she curated presence with precision, reinforcing the idea that true power doesn't need constant visibility. In 2025, her name alone still signaled excellence, discipline, and authority across the global entertainment economy. From an artistic standpoint, Beyoncé's catalog remained a benchmark. Her recent projects sustained massive streaming numbers worldwide, while her earlier works experienced renewed chart activity, a rare achievement that speaks to generational impact. Industry data shows that Beyoncé remains among the top-streamed black female artists globally, even decades into her career. Her influence extended beyond music, visual storytelling, choreography, and live performance aesthetics across pop and R&B. In 2025 still echoed frameworks she introduced years earlier. At this stage of her career, is Beyoncé competing with anyone or only with history itself? Awards and institutional recognition followed naturally. In 2025, Beyoncé continued to be cited in major industry rankings and cultural power lists, including recognition from platforms such as Revolt, which highlighted her sustained influence on black creativity, ownership, and representation. Her historic Grammy legacy, already the most awarded artist in Grammy history, remained a reference point rather than a headline, reinforcing how normalized her excellence has become. Few artists reach a point where awards feel expected rather than celebrated. Beyoncé has. Beyond entertainment, Beyoncé's social impact in 2025 carried quiet weight. Through philanthropy, economic empowerment initiatives, and consistent advocacy for black communities, women, and disaster relief efforts, she supported change without spectacle. Her business ventures emphasized black employment, fair pay, and long-term opportunity rather than short-term publicity. For many Americans aged 45 to 65, this approach feels familiar: success earned through discipline, vision, and accountability. Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar did not rule 2025 by being everywhere. He ruled it by being exact. In an era where attention is often mistaken for impact, Kendrick Lamar stood as one of the rare artists whose presence alone still carries authority. While many rappers chased algorithms, Kendrick continued to operate on his own timeline, proving that restraint can be more powerful than saturation. His silence between moves only sharpened their effect, reinforcing his reputation as hip-hop's most disciplined cultural voice. Musically, Kendrick's influence in 2025 remained undeniable. His catalog continued to generate hundreds of millions of annual streams globally, placing him among the most listened-to rappers of his generation despite infrequent releases. Critics and industry analysts consistently noted that his albums aged with relevance rather than fading with trends. In live settings, Kendrick's performances in 2025 were praised for their theatrical precision and narrative depth, often described as closer to spoken history than concerts. His ability to command arenas without relying on spectacle reaffirmed his standing as a true craftsman. Recognition followed naturally, even without new releases dominating headlines. Kendrick Lamar's legacy of multiple Grammy Awards, including Best Rap Album honors, remained a benchmark against which newer artists were measured. In 2025, his name frequently appeared in critical rankings, academic discussions, and cultural retrospectives examining hip-hop's evolution. Rather than being framed as a veteran looking back, Kendrick was treated as a standard still very much in motion, a rare position in a youth-driven industry. Beyond music, Kendrick's social influence continued quietly but meaningfully. He avoided viral activism and public theatrics, choosing instead to support community initiatives, youth education programs, and Black-owned creative spaces without self-promotion. This approach resonated with older audiences who recognize that lasting change is rarely loud. Kendrick's refusal to commodify his values strengthened his credibility, allowing his work to speak where statements were unnecessary. By the end of 2025, Kendrick Lamar had once again demonstrated that leadership in culture doesn't require constant presence. It requires clarity, consistency, and the discipline to let the work endure on its own terms. Keke Palmer. Keke Palmer did not quietly survive 2025. She steadily commanded it through versatility, credibility, and cultural intelligence. In an entertainment landscape that often struggles to sustain long-term relevance, Keke Palmer continued to evolve without abandoning her foundation. Actress, television host, producer, and cultural commentator Palmer's influence in 2025 came from her ability to move fluidly between formats while remaining authentic. She did not chase reinvention for attention. Instead, she refined her voice, becoming one of the most trusted and recognizable Black women in American media. Professionally, 2025 marked a year of validation rather than breakout. Palmer's work across film, television, and live hosting demonstrated range built over 2 decades in the industry. Her performances balanced emotional depth with commercial accessibility, while her hosting roles showcased timing, intelligence, and command of live audiences. This consistency culminated in her NAACP Image Award win in 2025, a recognition rooted not in hype, but in sustained excellence and cultural relevance. The award reinforced Palmer's position as a multi-generational figure respected by peers, embraced by audiences, and acknowledged by institutions. Beyond accolades, Palmer's influence extended into how Black women are seen and heard in public spaces. In 2025, she remained a leading example of professionalism without conformity. Her public commentary, whether humorous, reflective, or assertive, resonated strongly with audiences who value honesty over polish. Rather than manufacturing controversy, Palmer addressed real-life experiences with clarity and composure, earning credibility across age groups, particularly among older viewers who recognize resilience shaped by experience rather than outrage. Socially, Keke Palmer's impact in 2025 was defined by visibility with responsibility. She consistently supported conversations around mental health, workplace respect, and creative autonomy, especially for young Black women navigating public careers. Importantly, she did so without positioning herself as a spokesperson, allowing her actions and consistency to lead. Her career trajectory became proof that longevity in entertainment is possible without sacrificing dignity, adaptability, or self-awareness. By the end of 2025, Keke Palmer stood as more than a performer or host. She represented stability in a volatile industry, a reminder that real influence isn't built overnight, but earned through years of disciplined growth and earned trust. Teyana Taylor. Teyana Taylor did not take over 2025 by being everywhere. She did it by mastering everything she touched. Long known as a multidimensional creative force, Teyana Taylor entered 2025 no longer needing introduction or validation. Singer, actress, director, choreographer, and fashion icon, Taylor's influence matured into authority. Rather than chasing constant visibility, she focused on excellence behind the scenes and in front of the camera, proving that real power often operates outside the loudest spotlight. Artistically, Taylor's contributions in 2025 reflected control and intention. Her work across music visuals, film projects, and creative direction showcased a rare ability to bridge classic Black aesthetics with modern storytelling. Industry peers frequently cited her as a reference point for visual authenticity and physical storytelling, particularly in choreography-driven performance. Even when not releasing music at full scale, her fingerprints were visible across projects, shaping how Black artistry looks, moves, and feels in contemporary culture. That influence was formally recognized when Teyana Taylor was honored at the Ebony Power 100 in 2025, a distinction reserved for individuals whose impact extends beyond their primary field. The recognition highlighted not just her talent, but her leadership as a woman who controls her creative output, builds teams, and sets standards for ownership and authorship. Ebony's acknowledgement placed Taylor among cultural architects rather than trend participants, reinforcing her status as a tastemaker with staying power. Beyond accolades, Taylor's social influence in 2025 carried particular weight. She continued to champion body autonomy, creative freedom, and self-definition for Black women, especially within industries that historically profit from limiting expression. Her fashion presence rejected conformity, embracing strength, femininity, and individuality without compromise. For many Americans watching from outside the algorithm-driven noise, Taylor's career represented something increasingly rare, a creative path built on discipline, self-respect, and long-term vision. By the close of 2025, Teyana Taylor stood as proof that influence doesn't require constant output, it requires command. She didn't flood culture with content. She shaped its direction through precision, confidence, and creative ownership that will continue to echo long after trends move on. Olandria Carthan. Olandria Carthan did not shape 2025 from a stage or a screen. She shaped it from the spaces where culture is decided, protected, and sustained. Recognized as an honoree on the Ebony Power 100 in 2025, Olandria Carthan emerged as one of the year's most influential cultural figures, precisely because her work operated beyond celebrity. Her impact lived in strategy, narrative stewardship, and community-centered leadership areas that rarely attract viral attention but quietly determine whose voices endure. Throughout 2025, Carthan's influence was rooted in cultural infrastructure rather than spectacle. As a cultural strategist and organizer, she worked at the intersection of media, Black identity, and long-term representation. Her contributions focused on shaping platforms that amplify Black voices responsibly, emphasizing accuracy, dignity, and historical continuity. In a year defined by misinformation and performative allyship, Carthan's commitment to substance over noise stood out as both necessary and stabilizing. The Ebony Power 100 recognition did not celebrate a single project, but a pattern of influence. Ebony's criteria emphasized leadership that expands opportunity and reshapes cultural ecosystems, placing Carthan among individuals whose work affects how stories are told, funded, and preserved. Her inclusion reflected a broader understanding of power in 2025, one that values architects as much as performers. For many observers, especially older Americans familiar with behind-the-scenes leadership, her recognition felt overdue rather than surprising. Socially, Olandria Carthan's impact in 2025 was defined by trust. She engaged communities through dialogue rather than declaration, focusing on mentorship, cultural literacy, and sustainable leadership models. Her work reinforced the idea that cultural progress requires guardians as much as creators, people willing to protect integrity while others chase visibility. By prioritizing education and community alignment, she contributed to cultural stability during a volatile media era. By the end of 2025, Olandria Carthan represented a different kind of icon. Not a headline maker, but a standard setter. Her influence proved that real cultural power often belongs to those who operate quietly, shaping outcomes rather than attention. In doing so, she helped redefine what leadership looks like in modern Black excellence, measured not by volume, but by permanence. Essa did not simply succeed in 2025, She defined what modern R&B dominance looks like. In a year crowded with fast-moving trends, SZA stood out by doing something increasingly rare, sustaining emotional honesty at a massive commercial scale. Her influence in 2025 was not driven by controversy or constant reinvention, but by connection. Listeners didn't just stream her music, they lived with it. That depth of engagement made her one of the most powerful voices in contemporary soul and R&B. Commercially, SZA remained at the top of the industry. Her catalog continued to generate billions of cumulative streams worldwide, with multiple tracks maintaining long-term chart positions rather than brief peaks. In 2025, she ranked among the most streamed female R&B artists globally, a testament to endurance rather than momentary success. Unlike artists dependent on aggressive promotion, SZA's music thrived organically, fueled by word of mouth and emotional resonance. Concert tours and live appearances consistently sold out, proving her appeal translated far beyond digital platforms. Awards and recognition followed the numbers. By 2025, SZA's career was anchored by multiple Grammy wins and nominations, with her work frequently cited by critics as a reference point for modern songwriting. Industry institutions increasingly positioned her not just as a hitmaker, but as a defining artist of her generation. Her influence on younger singers, particularly Black women navigating vulnerability in mainstream music, was openly acknowledged in interviews, liner notes, and award speeches throughout the year. Socially, SZA's impact extended well beyond charts and trophies. In 2025, she remained a prominent voice for emotional transparency, body acceptance, and mental health awareness. Without presenting herself as an activist figure, she normalized conversations many listeners previously felt unable to express. For older audiences, her success offered a familiar lesson: authenticity outlasts image. SZA's refusal to polish away imperfections became her greatest strength, reshaping expectations of what success in Black music can look like. By the end of 2025, SZA had proven that leadership in music doesn't require dominance through force. It requires honesty, consistency, and the courage to let truth travel on its own. Glorilla. Glorilla did not quietly pass through 2025. She solidified her place as one of hip-hop's most grounded and authentic voices. In an industry often driven by image over substance, Glorilla's rise continued to stand out for its honesty and regional pride. Representing Memphis with unapologetic clarity, she carried herself less like a trend and more like a movement. By 2025, her presence no longer felt like a breakout moment. It felt established, earned, and respected. Musically, Glorilla's success was backed by numbers, not narratives. Her releases continued to perform strongly across major streaming platforms, consistently reaching millions of listeners without heavy reliance on gimmicks or controversy. Her sound, raw, Southern-rooted, and direct, resonated with audiences who value realism in hip-hop. In live performances throughout 2025, critics noted her command of the stage and connection with crowds, qualities that separated her from artists built primarily for digital virality. That momentum culminated in Glorilla winning a BET Award in 2025, a milestone that formally recognized her influence within Black music culture. The BET platform, known for reflecting cultural impact rather than industry politics, highlighted Glorilla as an artist whose work speaks directly to lived experience. The award did not mark a peak, but confirmation proof that her voice had lasting relevance. For many observers, especially older hip-hop listeners, her recognition signaled a return to authenticity over excess. Beyond awards and charts, Glorilla's social impact in 2025 carried particular significance. She remained vocal about self-confidence, independence, and staying grounded despite rapid success. Without positioning herself as a spokesperson, she became relatable to young women navigating pressure, visibility, and expectation. Her refusal to soften her personality or dilute her message earned respect across generations, especially among audiences who recognize resilience shaped by reality, not branding. By the end of 2025, Glorilla represented a new kind of hip-hop leadership, one rooted in truth, regional identity, and earned credibility. She didn't reshape culture by being loudest in the room. She did it by staying real, consistent, and unmistakably Leon Thomas. Leon Thomas did not dominate 2025 through celebrity spectacle. He shaped it through craftsmanship, musical intelligence, and quiet excellence. Long respected within industry circles, Leon Thomas entered 2025 as an artist whose influence extended far beyond name recognition. Known equally for his voice songwriting and production work, Thomas represented a class of black musicians who move culture forward without demanding the spotlight. His presence in 2025 reflected maturity, patience, and an old-school respect for the art itself. Musically, Leon Thomas stood out for depth rather than volume. His work blended R&B, soul, hip-hop, and rock influences into a sound that felt timeless rather than trend-driven. In 2025, critics praised his ability to balance emotional vulnerability with technical precision, a combination increasingly rare in mainstream music. His songs continued to perform strongly on streaming platforms, while his production credits reinforced his role as a behind-the-scenes architect, shaping other artists' success. For listeners tired of formulaic hits, Thomas offered substance and sincerity. That credibility was formally recognized when Leon Thomas won at the BET Awards 2025, a milestone that signaled peer acknowledgement rather than manufactured hype. BET's recognition underscored his importance as a creative force within black music culture, not just as a performer, but as a builder of sound and vision. The award validated years of disciplined work and positioned him as part of a lineage of musicians whose impact is measured in longevity rather than momentary buzz. Beyond awards, Leon Thomas's social and cultural influence in 2025 was rooted in representation. He embodied a model of black masculinity grounded in introspection, emotional honesty, and artistic curiosity. Without loud messaging or performative activism, his work normalized sensitivity, vulnerability, and musical exploration for younger audiences. For older Americans, his career echoed a familiar truth. The most enduring artists are those who respect their craft and let the work speak. By the close of 2025, Leon Thomas stood as proof that real power in music often lives behind the curtain. He didn't chase the culture, he quietly helped define its direction, one carefully crafted record at a time. Blue Ivy Carter. Blue Ivy. Carter did not enter 2025 as a novelty. She stepped into it as a legitimate young artist with growing authority. While many children of celebrities struggled to escape expectation, Blue Ivy Carter continued to distinguish herself through discipline, preparation, and visible growth. In 2025, her presence was no longer framed solely through lineage, but through performance. Audiences and critics alike began to acknowledge that her confidence on stage was earned, not inherited. Artistically, Blue Ivy's development in 2025 reflected careful guidance paired with personal commitment. Her performances demonstrated improved timing, musical awareness, and physical control qualities that cannot be manufactured overnight. Rather than being pushed into constant visibility, her appearances were measured and purposeful, reinforcing the idea that longevity matters more than early overexposure. Each moment felt intentional, reinforcing respect for the craft rather than exploitation of attention. That progress was formally recognized when Blue Ivy Carter received a BET Award in 2025, marking a significant milestone in her young career. The recognition was notable not because of her age, but because of the platform itself. BET has historically celebrated Black excellence rooted in cultural contribution, and its acknowledgement signaled that Blue Ivy's work met professional standards. The award symbolized preparation meeting opportunity, a lesson long understood by audiences who value earned success over shortcuts. Socially, Blue Ivy's influence in 2025 extended beyond performance. She became a visible example of how young Black excellence can be nurtured responsibly in public spaces. Her presence challenged long-standing narratives that fame must come at the cost of normal development. Instead, she represented structure, mentorship, and boundaries, principles especially resonant with older viewers who recognize the dangers of premature exposure. Culturally, Blue Ivy's emergence carried symbolic weight. She embodied generational continuity within Black artistry, not as repetition, but as evolution. Her confidence reflected a generation raised with access, preparation, and historical awareness. In a year often dominated by spectacle, her calm composure stood out as something rare. By the end of 2025, Blue Ivy Carter was no longer viewed as a future possibility alone. She was recognized as a present contributor, a young artist learning in real time how to carry legacy with discipline, respect, and quiet strength. Tracee Ellis Ross. Tracee Ellis Ross did not command 2025 through volume or controversy. She led it through clarity, confidence, and cultural maturity. In an era obsessed with reinvention, Tracee Ellis Ross continued to stand out by refining exactly who she has always been. Actress, producer, entrepreneur, and cultural voice Ross entered 2025 as a figure whose influence was rooted in trust. She did not chase relevance. Relevance followed her. Her presence carried a sense of steadiness that felt increasingly rare in modern media. Professionally, Ross remained highly visible without oversaturation. Her acting work continued to resonate with audiences who value emotional intelligence and authenticity over spectacle. Even when not leading major screen projects, her voice remained influential through interviews, speaking engagements, and curated public appearances. Industry observers noted that Ross had reached a phase of her career where participation itself elevated the space a mark of true longevity rather than momentary fame. That influence was formally acknowledged with her inclusion in the Ebony Power 100, a recognition that highlighted Ross's broader cultural contribution rather than a single performance. Ebony's honor emphasized her role as a cultural stabilizer, someone who shapes conversation, not chaos. For older American audiences, this recognition felt earned, reflecting decades of consistency, professionalism, and quiet leadership in an industry often hostile to aging Black women. Beyond entertainment, Tracee Ellis Ross's impact in 2025 was deeply social. Through her beauty brand and public advocacy, she continued to champion self-acceptance, aging with confidence, and redefining beauty standards for Black women. Her messaging rejected urgency and insecurity, instead encouraging patience, joy, and self-ownership. Importantly, she communicated these ideas without preaching, allowing lived example to do the work. Ross also remained a respected voice on issues of representation and equity, choosing thoughtful dialogue over performative outrage. She demonstrated that influence does not require constant confrontation, but it does require integrity. Her approach resonated strongly with audiences who understand that progress is often sustained by people willing to lead calmly through turbulence. By the close of 2025, Tracee Ellis Ross stood as a reminder that cultural power can age gracefully. She did not need to dominate the room to shape it. Her influence flowed through presence principle and permanence, changing expectations of what lasting Black excellence looks like in public life. Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson did not fade into legacy status in 2025. He actively reinforced why his name still carries unmatched authority in global cinema. At an age when many actors step away or are quietly sidelined, Samuel L. Jackson remained visibly and deliberately present. His continued work in film and television throughout 2025 underscored a career built not on nostalgia, but on reliability, range, and respect. Jackson did not chase relevance. He embodied it through consistency and unmistakable screen presence. Artistically, Jackson's impact in 2025 came from volume and versatility. With a career that already spans over 150 film appearances, he remained one of the most bankable and recognizable actors in Hollywood history. His performances continued to anchor major productions, offering gravitas to ensemble casts and credibility to new franchises. Directors and producers still relied on him not for novelty, but for assurance, a rare status earned over decades of disciplined work. For audiences, his presence signaled quality regardless of genre. Awards may no longer define Jackson's career, but institutional respect certainly does. His legacy includes an Academy Honorary Award, multiple BAFTA recognitions, and decades of critical acclaim. In 2025, his influence was frequently cited in industry retrospectives and film education spaces where his performances were studied as examples of character mastery and longevity. Younger actors openly referenced Jackson as a model for sustaining relevance without compromising identity, a powerful endorsement across generations. Socially, Samuel L. Jackson's influence extended beyond the screen. He remained a respected public voice on civic engagement, particularly around voting awareness and representation. Unlike louder celebrity activism, Jackson's approach was direct, grounded, and unapologetic, resonating strongly with older Americans who value clarity over theatrics. His willingness to speak plainly without diluting message or tone reinforced his credibility off-camera as much as on it. Culturally, Jackson represents something increasingly rare in 2025 permanence. He embodies a generation of Black artists who fought for space, earned respect, and refused to disappear once trends shifted. His continued visibility challenged Hollywood's long-standing age barriers and racial limitations, proving that excellence does not expire. By the end of 2025, Samuel L. Jackson stood not as a relic of film history, but as an active pillar of it, a living reminder that true legends don't step aside quietly. They keep showing up, setting standards and redefining what endurance really looks like. Denzel Washington. As an actor and director with more than 4 decades of influence, Washington remained a quiet constant in a volatile entertainment landscape. In 2025, his authority came from restraint selective projects, deliberate public appearances, and an unwavering commitment to craft. Where others pivoted to remain visible, Denzel Washington chose precision, a strategy that only reinforced his stature. Artistically, Washington's work continued to carry uncommon weight. Whether on screen or behind the camera, his involvement signaled seriousness of purpose and depth of storytelling. His performances are still studied for their control, moral gravity, and emotional economy, qualities increasingly rare in contemporary cinema. As a director, he maintained a reputation for fostering disciplined sets and performance-first storytelling, prioritizing character over spectacle. In 2025, critics and peers alike pointed to his approach as a corrective to an industry often driven by speed rather than substance. Recognition followed that consistency. Washington's inclusion on the Route 100 in 2025 reflected not a single achievement, but a body of influence, cultural, professional, and ethical. The Route's annual list honors Black leaders who shape outcomes across fields, and Washington's presence underscored how lasting power can be built without constant publicity. With 2 Academy Awards, multiple Golden Globes, and decades of critical acclaim already secured, this acknowledgement functioned as confirmation rather than culmination. Beyond film, Washington's social impact in 2025 remained measured and principled. He continued to mentor younger actors, support arts education, and speak thoughtfully about discipline, faith, and responsibility. His guidance favored preparation over entitlement, a message resonating strongly with older American audiences who value earned success. Unlike performative celebrity commentary, Washington's words carried credibility because they were consistent with a life lived deliberately. Culturally, Denzel Washington represented permanence. He challenged Hollywood's ageism by remaining relevant without reinvention and modeled leadership without spectacle. His career reminded audiences that excellence is not seasonal, it compounds. In a year defined by noise, his influence was felt in the calm spaces where decisions are made and standards are upheld. By the end of 2025, Washington stood not as a monument to the past, but as an active measure of quality proof that quiet authority, sustained integrity, and disciplined craft can still change everything. Quinta Brunson. Quinta Brunson did not ride momentum into 2025. She engineered it with precision, discipline, and a deep respect for storytelling. As an actress, writer, and producer, Brunson entered 2025 as one of the most trusted creative forces in television. Her influence came not from spectacle, but from craft scripts that respected audiences' performances grounded in truth and leadership that prioritized collaboration over ego. In a media environment often driven by short attention spans, Brunson's work rewarded patience and intelligence qualities that resonated strongly with viewers who value substance. Professionally, 2025 reaffirmed Brunson's position as a rare multi-hyphenate who excels on both sides of the camera. Her continued success as a producer demonstrated how creator-led television can thrive without compromising integrity. Projects under her guidance maintained strong viewership and critical approval, reflecting a balance of humor and social realism that felt increasingly necessary. Industry analysts consistently cited her work as proof that smart, character-driven comedy can still command mainstream attention in a crowded content landscape. Awards and institutional recognition followed naturally. By 2025, Brunson's career was anchored by major honors, including Emmy Awards, and continued recognition from organizations celebrating excellence in Black storytelling. These accolades were not treated as peaks, but as markers of sustained quality. Her presence on award stages and industry panels reinforced a broader shift. Creators who understand both audience and infrastructure are now setting the standard. For many seasoned viewers, this echoed an earlier era when television leaders were builders, first celebrities, second. Socially, Quinta Brunson's influence extended beyond ratings. Her work reframed how everyday Black life is portrayed on screen without caricature, trauma fixation, or apology. She demonstrated that representation can be joyful, intelligent, and commercially successful at the same time. In 2025, educators, parents, and cultural commentators frequently referenced her projects as examples of media that entertain while affirming dignity and community. Culturally, Brunson represented a generational transition handled with care. She honored those who came before her while refusing to repeat outdated formulas. Her leadership style emphasized preparation writers' rooms as learning spaces and long-term sustainability over viral moments. That approach earned respect across age groups, particularly among older Americans who recognize disciplined craftsmanship when they see it. By the end of 2025, Quinta Brunson stood not merely as a star, but as a standard-bearer, someone quietly reshaping television by proving that thoughtful leadership, consistent excellence, and earned trust can still change everything. Wayans family. Wayans family did not dominate 2025 with a single project. They did it by reminding the industry what generational impact truly looks like. In a year defined by fleeting trends and short-lived fame, the Wayans family stood as a living archive of Black comedic excellence. Their recognition at the NAACP Image Awards was not about one breakout moment, but about decades of influence that continue to shape American humor, film, and television. By 2025, their legacy had matured into something rare: institutional respect paired with cultural relevance. From sketch comedy and sitcoms to blockbuster films and independent projects, the Wayans family has collectively helped redefine what Black comedy could be. Their work consistently opened doors at a time when opportunities were limited, often building platforms rather than waiting for permission. In 2025, younger comedians and writers openly credited the Wayans Blueprint creative ownership, ensemble collaboration, and fearless satire as foundational to their careers. That influence, though quiet, remained deeply embedded in the industry's DNA. The NAACP Image Awards recognition in 2025 served as a formal acknowledgement of this multi-generational contribution. The honor highlighted not only their success on screen, but their role in expanding representation behind the camera. Writing rooms, production companies, and casting pipelines changed because the Wayans proved that Black-led comedy could be commercially viable, globally popular, and creatively diverse. For many older American viewers, this recognition felt long overdue, a confirmation of impact already understood by audiences for years. Socially and culturally, the Wayans family's influence extended beyond laughter. Their comedy often challenged stereotypes by exaggerating them to expose absurdity, using humor as critique rather than compliance. Over time, this approach helped normalize Black perspectives in mainstream entertainment without flattening complexity. In 2025, that legacy resonated strongly as conversations around representation became more nuanced and historically informed. Equally important was the family's emphasis on continuity. Rather than individual stardom alone, the Wayans model emphasized collective advancement, siblings, cousins, and collaborators rising together. This approach countered the industry's tendency to isolate success and instead promoted sustainability. For audiences aged 45-65, this mirrored familiar values, family mentorship, and shared progress over individual spectacle. By the end of 2025, the Wayans family stood not as a nostalgic footnote, but as active architects of modern comedy. Their NAACP recognition confirmed what history already suggested, that true cultural power isn't measured in trends, but in the ability to influence generations while staying unmistakably true to one's voice. Simone Biles. Already regarded as the most accomplished gymnast in history, Simone Biles entered 2025 with nothing left to prove. Yet her influence only deepened. In a sports culture that often demands constant winning at any cost, Biles represented mastery paired with self-awareness. Her presence in 2025 symbolized not just athletic excellence, but leadership rooted in control boundaries and long-term health. From a competitive standpoint, Biles' legacy remained unmatched. She is the most decorated gymnast of all time, with more than 30 Olympic and World Championship medals, including multiple Olympic golds. Even when not competing full schedules, her technical innovation skills, so difficult they carry her name in the official code of points, continue to shape how gymnastics is performed and judged worldwide. Coaches, judges, and athletes still measured difficulty, execution, and ambition against the standard she set. In 2025, that standard remained untouched. Awards and recognition followed her beyond competition. Biles consistently appeared on global lists honoring excellence in sport leadership and influence. However, unlike earlier phases of her career, these recognitions increasingly focused on her impact beyond medals. Institutions highlighted her role in changing conversations around athlete safety, autonomy, and mental health, areas once treated as weaknesses, but now recognized as pillars of sustainable performance. Socially, Simone Biles' influence in 2025 was profound. Her decision in previous years to prioritize mental health over external pressure permanently altered expectations in elite sports. By 2025, athletes across disciplines openly cited Biles as the reason they felt empowered to speak honestly about limits and well-being. For older American audiences, her story echoed a familiar truth. Real strength includes knowing when to step back, protect oneself, and return on one's own terms. Culturally, Biles stood as a symbol of Black excellence achieved without self-erasure. She succeeded without conforming to outdated expectations of silence, obedience, or sacrifice. Her confidence, discipline, and openness challenged long-standing norms in a sport historically resistant to change. By the end of 2025, Simone Biles was no longer defined solely by medals or records. She represented a shift in values, proof that greatness can evolve, mature, and still command respect. Quietly, decisively, she changed not just gymnastics, but the definition of what elite leadership looks like in modern sport. Angel Reese. Angel Reese did not arrive in 2025 as a promise, she arrived as proof. In her transition from collegiate stardom to the professional stage, Angel Reese became one of the most visible and effective forces in the WNBA. Her influence this year came from consistency and presence, rather than hype. Reese brought an edge rooted in work ethic, physicality, and confidence, redefining what leadership looks like for a new generation of women's basketball fans. On the court, Reese's impact in 2025 was measurable. She established herself as one of the league's elite rebounders, routinely ranking among the WNBA leaders in boards per game and setting franchise marks early in her career. Her style of play, relentless on the glass, disciplined in defensive positioning, and opportunistic in scoring, gave her teams second chances and control of tempo. Coaches and analysts frequently cited her motor and basketball IQ as separating factors, noting that her value extended well beyond the box score. Recognition followed performance. Reese's rookie season momentum carried into 2025 with league honors. All rookie acknowledgments and widespread media attention focused on her competitive impact rather than novelty. Importantly, coverage emphasized her durability and readiness for the professional grind, countering outdated narratives about young players needing long adjustment periods. For longtime basketball viewers, her emergence recalled earlier eras when toughness and fundamentals anchored success. Beyond basketball, Angel Reese's influence expanded into culture and commerce. She became a prominent figure in endorsements and brand partnerships, signaling a shift in how women athletes are valued in the marketplace. Reese's fashion sense and public confidence resonated with fans, particularly young women who saw representation that did not require softening or compromise. She demonstrated that authenticity could coexist with marketability, a lesson with lasting implications for women's sports. Socially, Reese's voice carried weight. She spoke candidly about confidence, criticism, and ownership of one's narrative, modeling resilience in a media environment quick to judge. Her visibility encouraged broader conversations about respect for women athletes, pay equity, and the evolving business of the WNBA. By the end of 2025, Angel Reese stood as both a cornerstone player and a cultural catalyst. She didn't just adapt to the professional game, she helped push it forward, proving that influence in modern sports is built through performance presence and the courage to stand firmly in one's identity. LeBron James. LeBron James did not merely appear in 2025, he continued to define the very framework of modern professional basketball. As the NBA's most enduring superstar, LeBron James entered 2025 with a legacy already secured, yet his influence remained active and evolving. At an age when most players have long retired, LeBron continued to perform at an elite level, reinforcing a career built on discipline, adaptability, and relentless preparation. His presence in 2025 symbolized durability as power, a reminder that greatness, when managed wisely, can outlast generations. On the court, LeBron's impact was both statistical and strategic. With a career total surpassing 40,000 regular season points, he remained the NBA's all-time leading scorer, a milestone that continues to contextualize every season he plays. In 2025, he adjusted his role to maximize efficiency, often functioning as both floor general and stabilizing force for younger teammates. Analysts consistently noted that his basketball IQ rather than athleticism alone remained his greatest weapon, allowing him to control games without dominating possession. Recognition followed naturally. LeBron's influence was acknowledged across cultural platforms, including his mention and celebration at the BET Awards, where his impact was framed not just in terms of sports, but Black excellence and leadership. Over his career, he has accumulated multiple NBA championships, 4 MVP awards, and countless All-NBA selections, but by 2025, awards served more as historical markers than motivation. His continued relevance itself became the achievement. Beyond basketball, LeBron's social and economic influence in 2025 was arguably even greater. Through business ventures spanning media, sports ownership, and entertainment, he expanded pathways for athlete-led control and equity. His educational initiatives, most notably programs supporting underserved students, continued to deliver measurable outcomes rather than symbolic gestures. For older American audiences, this approach reflected a familiar ethic: build something that lasts, then protect it. Culturally, LeBron James represented authority earned through longevity. He navigated public scrutiny, generational change, and evolving expectations without surrendering identity or purpose. His willingness to speak on civic issues paired with sustained professional excellence redefined what it means to be a Black athlete leader in America. By the end of 2025, LeBron James stood not as a farewell figure, but as a living institution, proof that true icons don't simply make history once. They continue shaping it, season after season, long after the noise has faded. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts did not seize 2025 with flash. He commanded it with disciplined preparation and unmistakable leadership. In a league driven by spectacle, Hurts continued to represent a different kind of authority. His influence in 2025 came from steadiness, calm in high-pressure moments, deliberate in decision-making, and consistent in accountability. While other quarterbacks chased headlines, Hurts embodied reliability, the quality coaches trust, teammates follow, and organizations build around. On the field, Hurts's impact remained clear and measurable. As the centerpiece of the Philadelphia Eagles offense, he maintained elite dual-threat effectiveness, combining precision passing with controlled mobility. Analysts continued to point to his efficiency in critical downs and his command of situational football traits that do not always dominate highlight reels, but consistently win games. His performances reinforced a modern quarterback model rooted in intelligence and adaptability rather than improvisation alone, a balance increasingly valued by veteran fans of the sport. That leadership translated into broader recognition. In 2025, Hurts was nominated at the BET Awards, an acknowledgement that extended beyond statistics to cultural influence. BET's platform traditionally honors figures whose impact resonates within Black communities, and Hurts' nomination reflected how his professionalism, humility, and work ethic had elevated him into a role model space. While accolades such as Pro Bowl selections and playoff appearances already defined his resume, this recognition highlighted his standing as a representative of Black excellence in sports. Off the field, Hurts's influence deepened in 2025 through intentional community engagement. He supported educational initiatives, youth development programs, and mentorship efforts with the same low-profile seriousness that defines his public persona. Rather than branding philanthropy, Hurts approached service as responsibility, a value that resonated strongly with older American audiences who recognize leadership by action rather than announcement. Culturally, Jalen Hurts stood as a counter-narrative to volatility. He demonstrated that confidence does not require bravado and authority does not require noise. His demeanor, composed, respectful, and prepared, recalled an earlier era of professional sports where conduct mattered as much as performance. By the end of 2025, Jalen Hurts had proven that modern NFL leadership can still be grounded in fundamentals. He did not dominate the year with controversy or spectacle. He shaped it by showing how consistency, character, and quiet confidence can still change outcomes on the field and far beyond it. Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris did not exit the national stage in 2025. She reshaped it through experience, presence, and enduring political gravity. As the first Black woman and first woman of South Asian descent to serve as Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris entered 2025 no longer defined by office, but by legacy. Her influence this year was quieter than during an election cycle, yet no less consequential. Harris represented continuity in leadership at a time when American politics felt fragmented and fatigued, particularly for older voters who value institutional memory and steady governance. Throughout 2025, Harris remained a visible national figure through policy discussions, speaking engagements, and advocacy work. Her focus centered on voting rights, judicial equity, reproductive freedom, and democratic participation, areas that defined her career long before the vice presidency. Rather than positioning herself as a partisan combatant, Harris increasingly operated as a stabilizing voice, emphasizing rule of law and civic responsibility. This approach resonated strongly with Americans who recognize that progress is often preserved, not just advanced. While awards were not the metric of her impact in 2025, institutional respect remained clear. Harris continued to appear on influential leadership lists and was frequently cited by political analysts as one of the most consequential Black political figures of the modern era. Her historic tenure as vice president remained a reference point in discussions about representation, not as symbolism alone, but as proof of sustained competence under extraordinary scrutiny. Socially, Harris's influence in 2025 extended well beyond Washington. For Black women in law, politics, and public service, she remained a powerful symbol of possibility earned through preparation. Her career trajectory from prosecutor to U.S. Senator to vice president reinforced the value of persistence and credibility over spectacle. Importantly, Harris avoided sensationalism, choosing instead to mentor, advise, and support the next generation of civic leaders behind the scenes. Culturally, Kamala Harris stood as a figure of permanence. In a media environment driven by outrage cycles, her measured tone and disciplined presence offered contrast. She did not rely on viral moments to assert relevance. Her very history carried weight. For many Americans aged 45 to 65, her leadership style echoed familiar values: respect for institutions, belief in gradual reform, and accountability rooted in experience. By the end of 2025, Kamala Harris had quietly reaffirmed her place in American history, not as a former official fading from view, but as a continuing force in shaping dialogue, defending democratic norms, and redefining what long-term Black political leadership looks like in the United States. Dean Forbes. Dean Forbes did not dominate 2025 through celebrity visibility. He shaped it through strategic leadership, economic influence, and institutional respect. As one of the most powerful Black executives in the United Kingdom, Dean Forbes entered 2025 firmly established as a leader whose impact is measured in outcomes, not headlines. His authority came from decades of experience navigating corporate transformation, scaling global operations, and driving growth in highly competitive sectors. In a year defined by economic uncertainty, Forbes represented calm, credible leadership rooted in long-term vision. Professionally, Forbes's influence in 2025 extended across boardrooms rather than media cycles. Known for leading major technology and data-driven enterprises, he has consistently been recognized for building sustainable business models while maintaining operational discipline. His leadership style emphasized accountability, workforce development, and innovation without excess risk. Industry observers frequently pointed to Forbes as an example of how Black leadership at the executive level can combine performance with stability, a balance increasingly rare in modern corporate culture. That influence was formally acknowledged through his placement on the Power List 2025, which ranks the most influential Black individuals in the UK. The distinction highlighted Forbes's role not only as a successful executive, but as a structural power broker, someone whose decisions affect employment, investment, and market direction. Power List recognition is not awarded for visibility alone. It reflects measurable impact, institutional trust, and sustained authority. For many seasoned professionals, Forbes's inclusion reaffirmed that true power often operates far from public applause. Beyond corporate success, Dean Forbes's social impact in 2025 was rooted in representation and mentorship. He remained a strong advocate for diversity in leadership pipelines, regularly supporting initiatives that expand access to executive education and board-level opportunities for underrepresented talent. Rather than performative messaging, his approach focused on systems recruitment, promotion, governance, where lasting change occurs. This method resonated with older audiences who understand that equity is built through structure, not slogans. Culturally, Forbes symbolized a shift in how Black excellence is perceived in business. He challenged outdated narratives that frame Black leadership as exceptional rather than essential. His career demonstrated that competence preparation and strategic thinking transcend identity while still carrying representational significance. By the end of 2025, Dean Forbes stood as a quiet force within global business, a reminder that economic power, when exercised responsibly, can shape opportunity for generations. He didn't seek the spotlight. He operated where decisions matter most quietly, helping define what modern Black leadership looks like at the highest levels. Naisha Bradley. Naisha Bradley shaped 2025, not by seeking attention, but by changing how institutions function from the inside. As a leader in diversity, equity, and inclusion, Bradley's influence was rooted in structure, policy, and accountability rather than slogans. In a year when DEI conversations faced skepticism and rollback in some sectors, her work emphasized durability, building systems that withstand political shifts and leadership turnover. That approach made her impact quiet but consequential. Throughout 2025, Bradley focused on translating values into operations. Her leadership centered on aligning recruitment, retention, evaluation, and culture so that inclusion became measurable and repeatable. Rather than framing equity as a moral add-on, she positioned it as a performance driver, improving decision-making, innovation, and institutional trust. This pragmatic framing resonated with senior leaders tasked with balancing mission and results, especially in complex organizations where change must be incremental to last. Her influence extended beyond a single institution. Bradley advised executives and teams on inclusive leadership, bias-aware systems, and long-term workforce development. She helped organizations move past performative gestures toward practices that actually shift outcomes, clear accountability, transparent data use, and leadership development pipelines. In 2025, this work mattered, as organizations sought stability amid cultural polarization. Bradley's methods reduced friction by focusing on process, not ideology. Recognition followed because her results were visible. She was frequently invited to contribute to high-level discussions on equity and leadership, not as a provocateur, but as a practitioner. Her credibility came from implementation, showing what works, where it breaks, and how to adjust. For experienced professionals, especially those accustomed to institutional change, moving slowly, her approach felt realistic and respectful of organizational complexity. Socially, Bradley's impact was equally grounded. She mentored emerging leaders, particularly Black women navigating authority in traditionally exclusionary spaces. Her presence modeled leadership that is firm without being performative, principled without being rigid. She emphasized preparation, clarity, and patience, values that resonate with audiences who understand that lasting progress is built over years, not headlines. By the end of 2025, Naisha Bradley stood as a reminder that some of the most important cultural shifts happen quietly. She didn't redefine equity through rhetoric. She embedded it into how decisions are made. In doing so, she helped reshape institutions in ways that will continue to matter long after the noise fades. Glyne A. Griffith II. Glyne A. Griffith II shaped 2025 by strengthening the connection between art equity and long-term social infrastructure. Rather than positioning the arts as a luxury or side conversation, Griffith treated culture as a central driver of civic health and community stability. His leadership in 2025 reflected a mature understanding of how creative ecosystems function, not just as expressions of identity, but as engines for economic opportunity, education, and collective memory. While much of his work unfolded outside the spotlight, its effects were deeply structural. Throughout 2025, Griffith focused on expanding access to arts funding, leadership pipelines, and institutional representation for historically excluded communities. His approach emphasized sustainability over spectacle. Instead of funding isolated projects, he supported systems that allow artists and cultural organizations to survive beyond single grants or seasonal attention. This strategy helped stabilize creative spaces that often struggle during economic uncertainty, reinforcing the arts as a permanent civic asset rather than a temporary trend. Professionally, Griffith was widely respected for his ability to bridge sectors. He moved fluently between philanthropy, nonprofit leadership, and cultural policy, translating artistic value into language decision-makers understand. In 2025, this skill proved essential as arts organizations navigated budget pressures and shifting public priorities. Griffith advocated for accountability and measurable outcomes without sacrificing artistic integrity, a balance that earned trust across institutional and community lines. His influence extended into social impact work where art intersected with education, racial equity, and community healing. Programs he supported emphasized mentorship, youth access, and leadership development, ensuring that creative opportunity did not remain concentrated among the already connected. For older American audiences, this model felt familiar and responsible. Invest in people, build institutions, and let progress compound over time. Culturally, Griffith represented a quiet but powerful form of Black leadership. He challenged the assumption that influence requires celebrity by demonstrating how behind-the-scenes decision-making shapes who get seen, funded, and remembered. His work reinforced the idea that culture does not sustain itself. It requires stewardship, strategy, and protection. By the end of 2025, Glyne A. Griffith II stood as a reminder that art and social progress are inseparable when treated with seriousness and care. He did not redefine culture through noise or controversy. He strengthened its foundation, ensuring that creativity, equity, and opportunity could endure together. Dr. Maya G. Nathosani. Dr. Maya G. Nathoasan shaped 2025 by redefining how knowledge is produced, distributed, and protected within educational spaces. In a year marked by misinformation, polarized discourse, and shrinking attention spans, Dr. Maya G. Nathoasan emerged as a steady force in publishing and education, one focused on accuracy, access, and long-term intellectual equity. Her influence did not come from loud public debate, but from the systems she helped strengthen behind the scenes where curriculum, scholarship, and learning infrastructure are built. Professionally, Dr. Nathoasan's work in 2025 centered on elevating underrepresented voices within academic and educational publishing. She played a critical role in shaping content standards, editorial practices, and learning materials that reflect diverse histories without compromising rigor. Her leadership emphasized that representation and excellence are not competing values but complementary ones. In publishing spaces often driven by market pressure, she defended depth, peer review, and contextual integrity, qualities increasingly valued by educators and institutions seeking credibility over speed. Her impact extended directly into education. Dr. Nathoasan supported initiatives that bridged scholarship and real-world learning, ensuring that research reached classrooms, communities, and policy discussions. In 2025, her work helped align educators, publishers, and institutions around sustainable learning models that prioritize critical thinking rather than rote consumption. For older American audiences, this approach echoed a familiar truth. Education is not about trends, but transmission, passing knowledge forward intact and usable. Recognition of her influence came through invitations to advise, lead, and mentor across academic and professional settings. Rather than positioning herself as a public intellectual for branding purposes, Dr. Nathoasan focused on strengthening leadership pipelines, particularly for Black scholars and educators navigating exclusionary systems. Her mentorship emphasized preparation, scholarly discipline, and institutional literacy tools necessary for lasting impact rather than symbolic inclusion. Socially, her influence in 2025 was defined by trust. She became a figure educators relied on when navigating sensitive topics with care and accuracy. Her leadership model rejected sensationalism, instead reinforcing education as a stabilizing force during cultural uncertainty. This resonated deeply with audiences who understand that knowledge shapes societies quietly, long before outcomes are visible. Letitia Nicho-Traoré. Letitia Nicho-Traoré shaped 2025 by proving that modern entrepreneurship can be both profitable and principled. As an accomplished entrepreneur, Letitia Ncho Traoré emerged as a quiet force in global business, leading with strategy rather than spectacle. In a year when many startups chased visibility over viability, her approach stood apart. She focused on building durable enterprises companies designed to grow responsibly, create jobs, and generate long-term value. Her influence in 2025 was felt not through constant publicity, but through results that spoke for themselves. Professionally, Ncho Traoré demonstrated a sharp understanding of markets, people, and timing. Her ventures emphasized operational discipline, sustainable growth, and cross-cultural collaboration, particularly within global and diaspora-linked economies. Rather than scaling too fast, she prioritized strong foundations, governance, talent development, and ethical supply chains. This method resonated in 2025, a year marked by economic uncertainty where businesses led by steady hands proved more resilient than those driven by hype. Recognition followed her performance. Ncho Traoré was increasingly cited in business circles as an example of Black female leadership that blends innovation with credibility. Her success challenged outdated assumptions about who leads global enterprises and how leadership should look. For experienced observers, especially older professionals, her trajectory reflected a familiar truth. Sustainable success is built patiently with discipline and foresight, not shortcuts. Beyond balance sheets, her social impact deepened in 2025. Ncho Traoré consistently invested in mentorship and workforce development, particularly for women and young professionals navigating barriers to entry in business. She supported initiatives that expand access to capital, skills training, and leadership opportunities, understanding that entrepreneurship is not only about individual achievement, but ecosystem health. Her work helped normalize the idea that inclusion and performance can and should advance together. Culturally, Ncho Traoré represented a modern model of Black entrepreneurship grounded in global perspective. She bridged continents, industries, and communities without diluting identity or values. Her leadership style, calm, prepared, and outcomes-driven, earned trust across sectors, reinforcing that authority does not need to be loud to be effective. By the end of 2025, Letitia Ncho Traoré stood as a symbol of entrepreneurial excellence rooted in responsibility. She didn't chase trends or validation. She built companies that expanded opportunity where it mattered, and quietly helped redefine what successful ethical business leadership looks like in a changing world. Lucky Daye. Lucky Daye did not dominate 2025 through noise or controversy. He shaped it through musical integrity, restraint, and emotional precision. In a landscape where R&B often competes with spectacle, Lucky Daye stood out by returning the genre to its core purpose feeling. His presence in 2025 felt intentional and mature, appealing strongly to listeners who value musicianship over algorithms. Rather than flooding the market, Daye curated his appearances, reinforcing the idea that scarcity can amplify meaning. Artistically, Lucky Daye's work in 2025 reflected a deep respect for classic soul traditions while remaining firmly contemporary. His vocal control, melodic phrasing, and lyrical vulnerability positioned him among the most credible male R&B artists of his generation. Streaming performance and live audience reception consistently demonstrated longevity rather than momentary spikes. Critics frequently highlighted his ability to translate studio intimacy into live performance, a skill that separates singers from true vocalists. That artistry was on full display when Lucky Daye performed at the Ebony Power 100 Gala, an event known for celebrating Black excellence across culture, leadership, and legacy. His inclusion was significant. Ebony does not select performers solely for popularity, but for cultural relevance and authenticity. Daye's performance aligned with the evening's tone, honoring heritage, while signaling forward momentum. For many in attendance, his presence reinforced R&B's enduring role as a soundtrack for Black reflection, resilience, and romance. Recognition for Daye's career had already been established through major industry honors, including Grammy Awards. But by 2025, those accolades functioned as credentials rather than headlines. He was no longer positioned as an emerging artist, but as a stabilizing force in modern soul music. Younger singers openly cited him as a reference point for vocal discipline and emotional honesty, while older listeners recognized echoes of an era when singers trusted silence as much as sound. Beyond music, Lucky Daye's social influence in 2025 was subtle but meaningful. He represented a form of black masculinity grounded in introspection rather than bravado. His lyrics normalized vulnerability without spectacle, offering space for emotional literacy in a culture often resistant to it. This approach resonated across generations, particularly with audiences who appreciate restraint and sincerity. By the end of 2025, Lucky Daye stood as a quiet reminder that soul music still matters when it is treated with care. He didn't redefine R&B by force. He preserved its depth, expanded its future, and proved that timeless artistry can still move culture softly, steadily, and with lasting impact. Ari Lennox. Ari Lennox shaped 2025 by proving that authenticity remains one of the most powerful currencies in music. In an era where R&B is often diluted by trend chasing and digital polish, Ari Lennox continued to stand firmly in her truth. Her influence in 2025 was not driven by controversy or constant exposure, but by emotional honesty and vocal presence. Lennox represented a generation of artists who understand that soul music thrives on vulnerability, not volume. Artistically, Ari Lennox's work in 2025 reinforced her position as one of modern R&B's most emotionally grounded voices. Her performances emphasized tone phrasing and feeling over spectacle. Audiences responded not because she demanded attention, but because her music invited connection. Streaming performance and sold-out live appearances reflected sustained listener loyalty, the kind built over time rather than through viral moments. For many longtime R&B fans, her sound recalled an era when singers trusted the song to carry the moment. That depth was on full display when Ari Lennox performed at the Ebony Power 100 Gala, a stage reserved for artists whose work reflects cultural significance rather than fleeting popularity. Her presence at the event was a statement. R&B rooted in honesty still belongs at the center of Black excellence celebrations. The performance resonated with audiences across generations, particularly older listeners who recognized restraint, vocal sincerity, and emotional intelligence as hallmarks of lasting artistry. Recognition for Lennox's career had already been established through industry awards and critical acclaim, but by 2025, her influence functioned beyond trophies. She had become a reference point, an artist other singers looked to when navigating vulnerability in a commercial space. Her refusal to conform to unrealistic beauty standards or manufactured personas strengthened her credibility, especially among women who saw themselves reflected in her openness. Socially, Ari Lennox's impact in 2025 was quiet but affirming. She continued to speak candidly about self-worth, mental health, and creative pressure without turning those conversations into branding exercises. Her honesty normalized imperfection and emotional complexity, reinforcing that success does not require emotional suppression. This resonated strongly with audiences who value realism over performance, particularly those who grew up with music as emotional refuge rather than content. By the end of 2025, Ari Lennox stood as a guardian of soul music's core values. She didn't chase dominance. She offered consistency, truth, and feeling, and in doing so, she quietly helped preserve the emotional center of contemporary R&B. Ayra Starr. Ayra Starr shaped 2025 by turning African pop into a disciplined global force rather than a passing trend. As one of the most recognizable voices of Afrobeat's new generation, Ayra Starr entered 2025 with momentum already secured and then expanded it through consistency, craft, and cultural confidence. Her influence this year did not come from novelty or shock value. It came from execution, strong records, reliable live performances, and a clear artistic identity that translated seamlessly across continents. Professionally, 2025 marked a consolidation year for Star. Her international touring schedule placed her in major markets across Africa, Europe, and North America, where venues filled with audiences who knew the words, not just the hook. Live reviews emphasized her vocal control and stage discipline, noting how she balanced youthful energy with growing technical command. This mattered in a global context where African artists are often expected to rely on vibe alone. Star demonstrated preparation, the hallmark of longevity. Awards and formal recognition followed the work. In 2025, Ayra Starr collected major industry honors and nominations tied to African and global music institutions, reinforcing her position as more than a breakout act. These acknowledgments reflected both commercial performance and artistic credibility. Importantly, the awards narrative around her centered on consistency and growth rather than hype, signaling a shift in how African female artists are evaluated on the world stage. Culturally, Star's impact extended beyond charts. She represented a modern African womanhood that is confident without imitation. Her fashion visuals and interviews reflected pride in origin rather than a need to translate herself for Western approval. For older audiences observing global music cycles, her approach echoed a familiar pattern: artists who last are those who carry their roots forward instead of abandoning them for access. Socially, Ayra Starr's presence in 2025 mattered because it normalized African leadership in global pop. She became a reference point for younger artists navigating international attention, proof that one can expand globally while remaining culturally grounded. Her success also contributed to broader economic visibility for African touring circuits, creative teams, and production ecosystems that grow alongside headline artists. Tyler Mitchell. Tyler Mitchell shaped 2025 by quietly redefining how Black life, beauty, and possibility are seen and preserved through the lens. In a visual culture driven by speed and spectacle, Mitchell's work stood apart for its patience and intention. He did not chase shock value or algorithmic trends. Instead, he continued to build a visual language rooted in softness, dignity, and complexity. By 2025, his influence was no longer confined to fashion or editorial spaces. It extended into museums, archives, and cultural memory. Artistically, Mitchell's photography in 2025 remained instantly recognizable. His images favored natural light, open space, and moments of rest choices that challenged long-standing visual stereotypes surrounding Black bodies and environments. Rather than framing subjects through struggle or excess, he centered ease, joy, and contemplation. This approach resonated across generations, particularly with audiences who recognized how rarely Black life has been allowed to appear unburdened in mainstream imagery. Professionally, Mitchell continued to operate at the intersection of art and commerce without compromising either. His collaborations with major fashion houses and publications maintained high visibility, while his fine art exhibitions reinforced institutional legitimacy. In 2025, curators and critics increasingly discussed his work in the context of American art history, not trend cycles. That shift signaled permanence, an artist whose contributions would be studied, not just circulated. Recognition followed through exhibitions, acquisitions, and cultural honors rather than headline-grabbing awards. Mitchell's photographs entered permanent collections and academic discourse, positioning him as a documentarian of contemporary Black experience. Importantly, his success expanded opportunity for other Black visual artists by proving that restraint, nuance, and authorship could thrive at the highest levels of the art world. Socially, Mitchell's impact was subtle but profound. His images offered viewers permission to imagine Black futures beyond survival narratives. For older audiences especially, his work recalled earlier moments when art served as refuge and record capturing not only who people were, but how they wished to be remembered. His commitment to representation without reduction helped shift expectations of what Black art can hold. By the end of 2025, Tyler Mitchell stood as more than a celebrated photographer. He was a visual historian in real time, shaping how this era will be seen decades from now. He didn't demand attention. He invited reflection, and in doing so, quietly changed the way culture looks at itself. Trell Thomas. Trell Thomas shaped 2025 by proving that the most enduring power often begins at the community level. As a founder and grassroots activist, Trell Thomas did not rely on celebrity platforms or viral outrage to make an impact. His influence came from proximity, working directly with people, neighborhoods, and local institutions to solve problems that rarely make national headlines. In 2025, his leadership reflected a return to fundamentals: trust, consistency, and community ownership. Professionally, Thomas focused on building organizations that outlast individual moments. His work emphasized sustainable community programs, addressing education access, economic opportunity, and civic engagement. Rather than chasing short-term wins, he invested in systems partnerships with schools, local businesses, and civic leaders designed to compound over time. This approach resonated in 2025, a year when many communities sought stability after prolonged social and economic disruption. Recognition of Thomas's impact came not through trophies but through measurable outcomes. Programs he helped establish showed increased participation, improved access to resources, and stronger local networks. Community members described his leadership as practical rather than symbolic, someone who listens before acting and remains present after media attention fades. For older Americans familiar with long-term civic work, this style felt credible and deeply familiar. Socially, Trell Thomas's influence extended into mentorship and leadership development. He prioritized empowering residents to become advocates for their own neighborhoods, reducing dependence on outside intervention. In 2025, this model strengthened community resilience, particularly among young people navigating limited opportunity and institutional distrust. Thomas's emphasis on accountability and self-determination helped restore confidence in collective action at a time when cynicism was widespread. Culturally, Thomas represented a form of Black leadership grounded in service rather than performance. He rejected the idea that change must be loud to be effective, instead demonstrating how steady presence builds legitimacy. His work reminded observers that movements are sustained not by moments, but by people willing to show up repeatedly even when progress is slow. Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey shaped 2025 not through constant visibility, but through the quiet authority of a legacy still in motion. Long after redefining daytime television, Oprah Winfrey entered 2025 as a figure whose influence no longer depends on airtime. Her presence carried weight because it was selective, intentional, and grounded in decades of earned trust. In a media landscape crowded with voices competing for attention, Oprah's restraint functioned as leadership, reminding audiences that credibility deepens when it isn't overspent. Professionally, Oprah's impact in 2025 lived at the intersection of media education and civic dialogue. Through carefully chosen interviews, curated storytelling, and platform stewardship, she continued to elevate conversations around resilience, purpose, and accountability. Rather than chasing trends, she framed issues with context and empathy, drawing audiences who value substance over speed. Her role evolved from host to convener, someone who sets the table and lets ideas breathe. Recognition has long been part of Oprah's story, but by 2025, awards served as footnotes to a broader record of influence. With a career that includes multiple Emmys, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and global honors for humanitarian leadership, institutional respect was assumed. What mattered more in 2025 was continuity. Oprah's ability to remain relevant without reinvention, to guide culture without commanding it. Socially, her philanthropic impact remained profound. Oprah's long-term investments in education, particularly for girls and underserved communities, continued to yield measurable outcomes. Scholarships, leadership programs, and school initiatives emphasized sustainability rather than symbolism. This approach resonated strongly with older American audiences who understand that real change is built over years, not announcements. Culturally, Oprah represented a standard of Black excellence rooted in responsibility. She modeled success without excess influence, without outrage, and compassion without performance. In a polarized era, her tone, measured, reflective, and humane, offered contrast and comfort. She did not present herself as a savior or spokesperson. She acted as a steward using access to expand opportunity and understanding. By the end of 2025, Oprah Winfrey stood as a living bridge between eras. She did not need to dominate the year to shape it. Her impact flowed through education, empowered conversations elevated, and lives quietly changed, proof that the most enduring icons lead not by volume, but by values that last. Shaquille O'Neal. Long after his Hall of Fame NBA career, Shaquille O'Neal entered 2025 as a fully realized entrepreneur and cultural figure whose influence extended far beyond sports. His authority this year came not from nostalgia, but from execution, operating businesses, partnerships, and platforms with the discipline of someone who understands scale branding and long-term value. Professionally, O'Neal's business portfolio continued to expand across food, fitness, entertainment, and consumer brands. By 2025, he was widely recognized for ownership and franchise investments that emphasized accessibility and job creation, particularly in underserved communities. His approach favored practical growth over speculative hype, a strategy that resonated in an uncertain economy. Executives and analysts alike noted that O'Neal's success stemmed from hands-on involvement, not passive endorsement. He learned operations hired locally and stayed accountable to outcomes. That influence was formally acknowledged with his inclusion in the Ebony Power 100 in 2025, honoring individuals who shape culture, opportunity, and leadership within Black communities. Ebony's recognition highlighted O'Neal's rare ability to translate fame into infrastructure businesses that employ people, platforms that elevate voices, and partnerships that endure. The honor reflected a broader understanding of power in 2025, not just visibility, but stewardship. Socially, O'Neal's impact remained deeply personal. His philanthropy focused on education, youth development, and community relief, often delivered quietly and directly. He continued to fund scholarships, support families in crisis, and invest in local initiatives without turning generosity into spectacle. For many older Americans, this approach felt familiar and trustworthy, help given with dignity, not fanfare. Culturally, Shaquille O'Neal represented a bridge between eras. He maintained mainstream appeal through media work and public appearances, while modeling a grounded, approachable leadership style. His humor never undercut his seriousness about responsibility. His accessibility never diminished his authority. In a media environment driven by extremes, O'Neal's balance stood out. In 2025, these Black icons didn't chase attention, they set direction. From culture and sports to business, education, and community leadership. Their influence moved quietly but decisively. They built systems, protected legacy, and redefined power without spectacle. This wasn't about viral moments or temporary fame. It was about endurance, discipline, and responsibility. At Legends of Black Excellence, we ask one final question. Did these leaders change 2025 more because they were powerful or because they chose to lead differently? Leave your thoughts below. Which name truly defines